All right, it is media day, and we are talking 4-6A, joined by Keller's head coach, Stralow. Coach, every year there is a team in the DFW area that I feel had an underrated great season. Last year, I want to say that was Keller, because that whole district, everybody wanted to talk about, oh, Byron Nelson is throwing up all these numbers, offensive numbers. And yes, they did get the better end of you in that game, and South Lake Carroll went a little bit further, but you gave Carroll their closest game. I was actually at that game, and man, I had to leave at halftime to get to another, and I was like, man, I got to find a way back to this game because this is going to be one heck of a finish. Granted, you didn't probably have your best game against Nelson, but you pulled off two tremendous playoff games, which were gritty wins there before falling to Louisville. I feel like your team did have a solid year that not really many people were talking about. Is that something you can build off of for your 2023 season?
Oh, absolutely. And I wish I'd have left with you at halftime of that Carroll game because we were winning at that point. No, we were undefeated going into that game, and I don't know how many times our kids have been in that environment. The year before, we had a similar environment of both us and Carroll being undefeated. It got lightning delayed to the next day, and we played it at a matinee, and it was a crazy scene. They won that football game. But I was proud of how our kids competed, and I told them, if you play like that, like you did tonight, you can play as long as you want to. And Byron Nelson the next week, we kind of let that you try and fight hangover or on that, but I don't know if we'd have won that game or would have changed things, because Byron Nelson had a really good team and it was a bad matchup for us. So moving forward, I told our kids, if you'll play like you've played all year, you can play as long as you want to, but you're going to need to play well the next 3 weeks, and you get to host a playoff game. And our kids perked up like, we could still host a playoff game, and yes, you could. And they did exactly that. They played their hearts out. And then the night we played Trinity here at Keller ISD Stadium, cold playoff night. The electricity got cut off because our indoor facility that's being built, they hit the mains, so we didn't have electricity until about 4:30, and they brought in a generator, and big enough for a hospital, and so there was a nice hint of diesel. But I told her, one of our coaches said something about it. I said, our kids haven't complained yet, so don't tell them a thing. Let's just go play. And we're real fortunate, and then go out and beat Midland Legacy. It's got a really good program and a really good team. And the clock hit midnight about noon that next week against a really good Louisville team. But it's the farthest our team's gone since 1966, this program, when Keller was a Class B school. So looking back, there's a lot to be proud of and a whole lot to build off of.
Yeah, you talked about, because we could talk about Trey Guerra and your offensive numbers day in and day out from last year, but that Trinity game, boy, you had to have that stand at the end, and it was a tough turnover, and you're like, oh my God, this thing could get away from us, and you got the defensive stand that you needed in that game to pull it off, a gutsy win there. Talk about how the defense may look from that game on, what it may look like for 2023. Do you have guys coming back from that team that could star for you this year?
We've got a couple really good players back, and Ryan Ventura, who had 142 tackles and 5 interceptions, is back in the back. Parker Knowles, who was part of that last play against Trinity, is back at linebacker. And then the rest of the starters are enrolling in a college near you in the next month or so. So we're going to be young, but we're not void of talent. Great young group of kids. We may possibly start 9 juniors this year, so it'll bode well for the future, but we may have to work some combinations and some bumps in non-district to get it look anything like last year.
And we were looking at, if we flip over to the offensive side, man, we spent a lot on our show talking about Amarian Henry, just because, man, we wanted to get him that scholarship. I wanted to highlight him, get him that scholarship that he wanted. But, and he's gone now, and he had a solid year, and Trey had a solid year. But you talk about this year, maybe this is the time, if he's even in the shadows. I don't even think he's in the shadow, but Trey Griffiths can come out and say, okay, Amarian was our guy, but I got that Oklahoma State offer that I've committed to, and I'm going to show you what I can do this year. Do you look for a bigger role out of him this year?
Well, I've known that young man since he was 7. His dad was our girls soccer coach here when I took the job in 2012. He'd been here several years. So I've known the player, the kid before he was a player in the family. And I really think he's primed to have a really big year. He's worked hard at his craft. He's a very talented player. And committing to Oklahoma State last week and getting that settled up, you could just see a relief in his eyes on Monday of not having to worry about that anymore. And I think that's going to allow him to have the year. He had a great year last year, but to have a really good year. And offensively, we have a lot back. Our tight end, Parker Iverson, who's a 6'5", 220-pound kid that probably possesses the ball as good as anybody in our program. And then we got a running back that was back, and he was nicked a little last year, but he had a tremendous year until he was out. And then our offensive line, our top 7 of our top 8 offensive linemen are back. And then we've got some other parts. So we're going to have to lean on them early in the season as the defense grows.
Yeah, I do these interviews throughout the whole summer, and you're one of maybe a handful of coaches that say, hey, I got a lot of offensive line coming back. I'm feeling a little confident on that. So that's got to be a good thing, especially since you're bringing in, you're starting a new quarterback. And we talked off camera how you went up to 7-on-7 in Oklahoma. Did you get a chance to see who you have? And maybe you can tell us who you have starting the quarterback this year.
We have 2 quarterbacks that are still battling it out. They were neck and neck as we went through the spring. We had a weird collarbone injury to one of the young men, and but he's getting cleared today, and so they'll be back at it. And we like our options, 2 young men, and we'll let that play out and see how that works itself out through scrimmages and non-district. I'm planning on playing them both and let them figure it out.
Gotcha. I forgot it's June. I'm not trying to make you rush into a decision here. Tell me the quarterback.
No, hey, it's better to have 2 than none. And so,
absolutely.
And we got some good young ones coming. So, and if you're going to be new at quarterback, it's good to be really good at the offensive line. So, I hope it pairs well together.
Finally, let's talk a little bit about the district. Byron Nelson actually loses a lot of their offensive power, but they still got a lot of good defensive players coming back. There's an Ezukama still playing over there at Timber Creek. And then, of course, there's South Lake Carroll. Talk about some of the teams that you may have to face and where you think the problem may lie in this district.
Depth last year, I don't know, maybe the Duncanville, DeSoto, Waxahachie runs that they had, but I don't know of very many districts, and I haven't looked, but that had 3 teams go 3 rounds and one of them go 4. And I think there's teams in this district that can get in and do exactly that. It's going to be a knockdown, drag out, week in, week out. You never know. And we scrimmage Mansfield Summit, and I love Coach Hall, and we get after it in our scrimmage, and you kind of figure out what you might have at that point, and then going through non-district, but you never really know until you get there. There's people graduating this district and then come back as well. So it's going to be week to week and probably come right down to the wire on a lot of teams, because I think there's a lot of teams that have the right nights could get through this district.
It's certainly going to be fun, and I know your fans are rabid. Thinking about that South Lake game, going to South Lake, and just the wildness going on your sidelines. Matter of fact, the only games I seem to be able to shoot are the South Lake ones, because we got you probably met him, James Harris, lives right around the block from Keller ISD, so he gets all the Keller games. But I was actually at that matinee game the day before. We had a nice little rainstorm right in the middle of that thing, and your fans were.
We were winning when it was raining. I was okay if it kept raining, but when it stopped raining is when it got interesting. So.
But your fan base always brings the numbers, and they're always ready to go at every game. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing plays out, and we only have a couple months to wait. So I appreciate you joining us, Coach.
Absolutely, and thanks for highlighting our program and our kids. And thank you for doing what you do for high school athletics.
No problem.